us today, we've got Jacqueline Baldwin. Jackie began her career in the financial services industry in 1986 and was awarded a professional designation in the field of long-term care, certified in long-term care. And the program is independent of the insurance industry and focuses on providing financial service professionals the tools needed to meet their clients' long-term needs. She believes in providing a comprehensive strategy to preserve a quality of life as a centerpiece in her approach to aging plans, long-term care, and financial plannings, and collaborating with families, adult children, and aging parents, corporations, and individuals. She seeks to create a strategy that is more than just obtaining insurance and investment products. And Jacqueline is with us today from Alaska. I think that's so cool. By way of Connecticut, she's there visiting family. So hopefully we've got some good internet, and I will go ahead and have you present your slides. Thank you so much for being here.
And thank you so much, Nicole, for having me. It's such an honor. And I am going to share my screen. Okay, and just do, whoops. You know what happens, everything covers up what you need. There we go, hold on. Awesome, all right. So thank you all so much for having me here today. I am absolutely honored and thrilled to be here, and I really have such a passion and heart and honor and respect caregivers so much. I had that role briefly in a couple of different scenarios in my life with my parents, and then again with my son through mental health issues. And so through that, I just have such a soft spot in my heart for all of you. And I know how challenging it can be. So with that said, I actually wanted to take a moment to just take time to take a breather. So, because I imagine that this day has been full of information, and while it's helpful, you're going, oof, I'm a little bit feeling maybe a little tense. So what I'd like to do is just for each of us to take a moment maybe and just take a deep breath in and breathe out. For me, that always helps. I know I'm your last presenter for the day, and so it's nice to just take a deep cleansing breath in. And also, if you're anything like some of my clients, when we start talking finance, people start to get tense. And I appreciate that. But I want to tell you that I'm a holistic financial advisor. And I get asked a lot, well, what does that mean? Well, for me, I want to make sure that I help my clients attend to what I call the Triad of Health. And as was alluded earlier, when you have, we need to make sure that we are taking care of all of our financial health, our emotional health, as well as our physical health. And if any one of those is out of whack, it can really have a very negative impact on the other two. As a caregiver, you're trying to juggle all of these all at once, all the time. And so what I try to do with my clients is to make sure that I can help with the financial piece, but I really do focus on making sure that you attend to the emotional and physical. And sometimes that requires a financial resource when we're talking about budgeting and things like that. We're not getting into budgeting today, but just make sure, for example, when I'm talking about a cash flow with my clients, I have what's called the top of the line expenses, which are ones that we are non-negotiable. You know, you have to have them. We might be able to tweak them a little bit, but you can't do without. And then I have the extras on the bottom, which are, you know, maybe eating out, travel, entertainment, things like that. Well, guess what? Self-care, that's on that non-negotiable part on top, because you can't sacrifice that self-care. And so we need to make sure that we have resources for that. So that's what I mean by being a holistic financial advisor. So when we talk about financial planning when it comes to being a caregiver, you as a caregiver are really in the weeds day to day, trying to make sure that you're thinking of doctor's appointments and physical therapy and all of the other components that go along with that. And so oftentimes we don't think about the longer plan of what happens if I'm not able to be the caregiver for my loved one, whether that be on a temporary basis or a permanent basis. And I want to encourage you to put a plan in place now while you are the caregiver and you are in the grid of it and you know what has to happen. Because what you don't want to have happen is for maybe you have a sudden illness where all of a sudden you're not able to be there for your loved one, and now somebody else is having to step in and you're anxious about how is that going to happen. If you have a plan in place, that's all going to just make that so much easier, and it will leave you with a peace of mind so that you can then go about those day-to-day things as a caregiver today. So why do I need a plan? Well, if you're all of a sudden not there to be that caregiver, you want to make sure that your loved one is taken care of and that there is not a lapse in that care. Who's going to help you create that? Well, there's a whole list of professionals that can help you and resources, many of whom have already spoken to you today. And then you will need to solicit the help of an attorney, a financial advisor, people like that. It takes a whole team to put together a plan. And then that team can help you implement that plan. And once you have a plan in place, you need to make sure that all the people that are going to be involved with that plan know about the plan, because you can have the best plan, and if it's a well-kept secret, it's not going to do anybody any good. So what in the world is a plan anyway? Well, I equate it to when my children were in elementary school. They'd go into school and the fireman would come in and talk about fire safety. And they'd teach them how to stop, drop, and roll and whatnot. But most importantly, they would come home with a checklist. And so we would dutifully go through the checklist through the house and make sure that there were no frayed cords, we didn't have too many plugs stuck in one outlet, things like that. So once we'd gone through our checklist and corrected anything that we needed to, then we needed to create an emergency exit plan. In the event that there's a fire, oftentimes those things happen at night when everybody's in their separate bedrooms. That's not the time that I should be trying to come up with a plan and tell my kids, hey, there's a rope ladder under your bed. You got to open your window, throw it out. No, 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 no. We need to know what is this plan before the emergency happens, before the crisis occurs, so that everybody knows what that plan is. And then it's simply, we just have to enact the plan. So all the pieces are in place and all the people who are going to be in charge of helping to implement that plan know what that plan is. So one of the top things, which you already know, and I'm sure I don't need to be saying this, is just stay organized. And that can be a very daunting task when you're in the middle of trying to take care of all the medications and all the other various to-do lists, and you have documents and so forth. You want to try to stay as organized as possible. I'm up here in Maine, for example, Alaska, and I'm helping, my family's facing a medical challenge here, so I'm here helping out. And one of the simple things is there's an internet in this gallery that I'm in, and we can't find the password. And we've searched for hours for that. How many times have you been looking for something that you really needed and you can't find it? So it's really important to try to stay as organized as possible as you go along. So one thing that I would recommend is to kind of keep a manual. What it does is it helps you stay organized, but it also becomes part of that plan so that if somebody had to step into being a caregiver, it's all in there for you. So what I recommend is, and you can do it all online, there are apps such as Caring Village. I don't know if anybody has heard of that. But also I find just a good old-fashioned paper manual is also helpful. What if you can't find a password? What if the person needs it, can't find the password? So you kind of need that paper manual that maybe has all those passwords in it. What I recommend is these sheets that you can just stick into your binder, and then you can put all those documents right in here safely, but they can be taken out Keeps everything nice and orderly for you. And that way too, they don't have to be the originals, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend that they're the originals, but put a copy in and then maybe say where the original is going to be located. This way, if somebody needs to step in, even for, you know, a few days, it's all right there for them. So some of the things that you might want to consider putting in this manual, and maybe you want to have a couple of them, is for your loved one, you're going to want to have a list of all your doctors and your caregiver team. You want to have all those important legal documents like birth certificates and social security cards and all of that. You want to have a letter of intent. We're going to go into that a little bit later. If there are trusts that you have in place, you want to have the copies of the trusts in there, at least saying what the trust is and where it can be located. If there would be then guardianship papers for your loved one in the event that you weren't there, you want to have all of that in there so that somebody can help you or be ready to step in. And then a list of advocacy organizations that may be helpful. Also the names of all the government agencies and then the caseworkers that you've dealt with, because that way that next person that's stepping in knows exactly who to call and they don't have to recreate the wheel. For you, you also have to have your own documents. So again, you want to have all of your doctors, attorney, accountant, your financial advisor information in there. You want to have advanced healthcare and financial directives, powers of attorney, living wills, and healthcare proxies. So what are all of those? Well, if you are incapacitated and not able to make financial decisions for yourself, or you find yourself in the hospital and not able to advocate for yourself, these are legal documents that give someone else the power to act on your behalf and to advocate for you. And so these are all really important documents to have. And then you want to have a list of all of your major assets, such as annuities, life insurance, any long-term care insurance that you may have, and so forth. And then where are those kept? And then you want to have written instructions with details of any wishes for your own final arrangements. And this is all, I know it's not something that we necessarily want to talk about, but these are all gifts that you're giving to the next person that's going to be either stepping in as caregiver or handling your personal affairs. Having all of this laid out and organized makes that job so much easier for that next person. I'm not going to go through the governmental and all the programs. I'm sure that you are aware of most of these. If not, you know, Nicole and others are able to help you work all through these different programs. I will touch on the ALBE program, which is a savings program for providing for supplemental assets and care. But we'll get to that in a little bit. But all of these programs are going to be continued. They're part of your program, and you want to make sure that things that you're doing don't inadvertently, or your other family members are doing, don't inadvertently create a situation where your loved one who is depending on those resources all of a sudden find that they have created a situation where they're no longer eligible for benefits. We'll get to that in a little bit. So you want to lay a solid foundation. Long-term care planning is for you, as well as we want to make sure that we have care for the caregiver, quite frankly. And as we've already heard, oftentimes caregivers, because you're putting out so much energy and so much time, oftentimes we forget to take care of ourselves, and we can actually become ill ourselves. And so we want to make sure that we have our own long-term care plan in place. So again, you want to make sure you have your power of attorney and your healthcare powers. All of this information you want to have handy and predetermined, so that if in the event that you now find yourself needing care, that someone can step in and take care of that as well. And then we have the basic estate planning. And this is going to be really the same for any family. So everybody should have a will, which outlines the distribution of your assets, including all your tangible property, your cash, your securities, and so forth. What happens is if there isn't a valid will that is in existence, then the state law determines what the distribution of all those assets will be. as well as determining guardianship for the person that you are now guardian for. So you want to make sure that you have all of these next steps put in place. It may include life insurance to cover your own final expenses and also to provide the security for your family. And then the other thing to really make sure is that when you have your own qualified assets, such as retirement plans and things like that, that the beneficiaries are correct and that they are kept up to date. Now, when I mean correct, we want to make sure that if you are leaving your retirement plans and so forth to the loved one that is on these governmental programs, that really can be a problem. So you want to make sure that if you have assets that you want to be left to those people, those loved ones, that you create a different avenue for those that cannot really be left directly to that person. And we'll get more into that in a little bit. But also, I can't tell you how many times life changes. And you may have named beneficiaries years ago when you set up your 401k plan, for example. Maybe at that time you weren't even married or you didn't have children. And so it's left to someone else that may not even be living like a parent. So make sure that you stay up to date on those beneficiaries. I've had numerous people, when we review beneficiaries on life insurance policies and all of that, that it's left to someone, they like, oh my goodness, I didn't want that person to get, that's not a valid person any longer. So really try to look at those at least annually, especially if you have a life-changing event. So the other thing is when we talk about planning, we also then have advanced planning. And so this is where if you are guardian for someone, whether they be an adult that you are guardian for or a minor child, you want to make sure that you choose the guardian who will then carry out your wishes if you are no longer able to do so. Because otherwise, as I had mentioned, the government, I mean, the courts will come in and make that decision for you, and it may or may not be the person that you would have selected. So make sure that you have a will, that it's naming the guardian who's going to understand and carry out your wishes for your loved one's care. The other thing that you want to make sure that you're looking at is if you are no longer there to provide care, you may want to look at identifying an appropriate care facility so that your loved one would be able to move into that situation, and you've already scoped it out and it's exactly what you want, whatever makes more the sense. And then you want to consider distribution of assets among beneficiaries. So for example, if you're a parent and you have one child, then you want to make sure that you have all those funds, as I mentioned, not going directly to that child. We need to set up trusts and get to that. But also, if you have more than one child, then we want to make sure that we are accounting for that as well. So we're setting up trusts and then also setting up the appropriate beneficiaries to leave for the other beneficiaries as well. And I think we've kind of gone over this pretty well, but what will happen is also something to note that if you do select a guardian that lives in another state other than where you're setting all this up, there may be laws that affect your loved one's benefits if they should need to move to that state. So you also want to make sure that you're consulting with attorneys to help you make sure that because there's always different laws to Medicaid and other benefits. So make sure that you're looking that up and see if there's any changes that you would want to make sure that are being covered in that. And then you want to create a special needs trust to receive the assets upon your death if you're going to be leaving assets to then help that guardian take care of your loved one after you're no longer here. So legal considerations for the ongoing care. what I find is sometimes people don't realize that once a child turns 18, they are, you're no longer his or her legal guardian, even if your child has a disability. So according to the law, all persons, 18 years and older are presumed competent. And so that means that we now need to change from just being their parent guardian to now we need to be a legal guardian of this person who's now 18 and over. And so you want to make sure that you start that process before they turn 18, because that can actually take it can actually take a year to get that guardianship in place. Another way to handle that would be to create a durable power of attorney for your child. And so that when they turn 18, you become, just like you need a power of attorney for you, then you become that power of attorney for your adult child. So I had mentioned earlier in the manual that you want to have what's called a letter of intent. And this is a letter. It is not a legally binding document, but it is a letter that you are leaving for the next caregiver and so forth, so that nobody knows your loved one better than you do. And so you want to make sure that the daily routine and the health history and likes and dislikes and fears are all being accounted for in this letter, so that when somebody picks that up, they get a good feeling of all those little things that you did that were so special with that person. Do they like to have hot chocolate or whatever it is? Maybe they really don't like chocolate. Favorite activities, families, social life, what might their spiritual life be, all of these kinds of things. This is your place to put in your hopes and your dreams for your loved one's future. So this is for you to leave all of this information that you would love for someone to know, that you know so intimately about the person that you're caring for. So when we come to financial savings, oh, I spelled that wrong, goodness. It's called an ALBE savings account. And so what you want to do here is you can go into a national resource website, and I put it here, to really find out all the ins and outs of ALBE accounts. But basically, this is a place for you to save money. The person who is disabled can save money on their own. And it is their asset, but it doesn't count against the SSI. So you're eligible if your disability was present before the age of 26, and one of the following is true. You're eligible for SSI or SSDI because of a disability. You experience blindness as determined by the Social Security Act, or you have a similarly severe disability with a written description written up by a doctor. So the ABLE account does have some limitations. There can be an annual contribution limit of up to $15,000. There's ability to make contributions. So if the person is actually working and making some money, we can also put money in from earnings. Definitely seek the guidance from an accountant on that. The balance can be up over 100,000. However, if the balance is over 100,000, then the amount over is counted against your limit along with your other assets held in non-ABLE accounts. And so what that would do is it would cause your SSI benefits to be suspended until that account balance is brought down. But you would continue to be eligible for Medicaid regardless of your account balance. This account is able to be used for all of these various expenses, along with a host of others. The other good thing about an ABLE account is that when you put the money in, while it's not tax deductible, the contributions going in, they are grow tax free for you. So as long as the accounts, the growth and so forth is taken out and used for those expenses that were listed, then there would be no tax on that growth. So that's a huge benefit as well. Now, the other thing you might want to do in conjunction with an ABLE account is to set up a special needs trust. The special needs trusts are ways, again, to leave money to your loved one without affecting the benefits that are the governmental benefits. So these are not meant to completely replace the governmental programs, they're meant to supplement those. When you have a special needs trust, you want to make sure that you have a trustee, and they would have sole discretion over the distribution. So make sure that you select this person wisely. Make sure that it's somebody that is savvy with financial matters and that knows your loved one and so forth. You could have a parent and a professional, such as an attorney or a financial institution, as co-trustees. It really should not be the guardian, however. You really want to have a separation there so that you have the guardian and then you have a trustee of the assets. So there's different types of special needs trusts. There's what's something called a first party special need trust. And this is actually called an irrevocable trust, meaning that the money that goes in it's a completed gift and it can't be taken back out. And the beneficiary doesn't have access to this, or the person that put the money in doesn't have access to it to take it back. So we would fund this with assets belonging to the beneficiary, and it must be established before age 65. It can be created with a standalone document, so it doesn't have to be done through a will or whatnot. And it is established by the child or someone with authority, or the person that is receiving care, or by someone who has authority to act on their behalf. So in other words, if it's somebody who had a power of attorney. And the trustees make distributions, but these distributions are limited to only the basic needs. And when the child or the person whose name this trust was in passes away, the assets that are left in the trust can be used for funeral expenses. The difference with this trust is that then any remaining assets are paid back to the state agencies that then provided the assistance, such as for Medicaid. So if there's anything left in this trust, it does not go to any further beneficiaries. A third-party special needs trust can either be irrevocable or revocable. So what I mean by that is it can be an irrevocable trust where the money goes in and wouldn't be used, or revocable, meaning that it could be shifted around and so forth. So there are no age limits on this type of a trust, and it is funded with assets belonging to anyone other than the beneficiary. So this would come from contributions from family members, directed from a will, for example, life insurance proceeds directed to the trust. This could be either a standalone document, which is established by the child, or it could be part of a will that actually creates this. The trustees do have more flexibility on this for distributions, and it's not limited to just basic needs only. And in this case, when the child or the person dies, then the trust could be used to pay for funeral expenses, and then anything remaining would be paid to other beneficiaries, such as the siblings, or maybe a special charity that the person wishes to have. Lastly, there are pooled special needs trusts. There aren't any limits on this, and it may be either a first party, where it's assets of the beneficiary, or a third party, where it's assets from outside, family members or whatnot, or settlements. And then here, the difference is you would have a professional trustee. And what this is, pooled, is just that we're actually pooling assets. It's run by a nonprofit organization, and they pool assets from many beneficiaries, and it's professionally managed, and it is a less expensive way to shelter assets so that they are not going to then cause the person receiving Social Security, disability, and things like that, we don't want those governmental benefits to be become not eligible for those. And so this is probably the least expensive way to go about this. And, you know, so it just kind of depends on what your individual situation looks like. So you have very many very many options for putting aside dollars for your loved one to make sure that that care that you want them to have is continuing without jeopardizing those very, very important governmental assets, governmental benefits. And so what I would recommend is, before setting up any trusts at all, it's really important to work with an attorney, and an attorney that specializes in working in special needs trusts, because it's a very, can be very complicated, and every situation is unique. And so what might work for one person may not be the best solution for someone else. So you really want to talk with somebody, talk it through, and then come up with the best solution. And it may be a combination of an ABLE account and a special needs trust. It may be a whole host of other ways to handle this. So, you know, being a caregiver is at times that lifelong engagement, and it can be so overwhelming. And as was mentioned before, with the I believe Alyssa and Mary Jo were saying, you're not alone. And so make sure that you really reach out. It takes a village to make sure that you are taking care of yourself, and that you are supported in taking care of your loved one. And so there are many, many partners and resources available to you, and make sure that you do utilize all of those. We're all here to help you. And so don't ever feel like I gotta just try to figure this out on my own. It's too exhausting, and there are many levels, and it can be complicated. And so you want to make sure you get to the right person to help with the right situations. And I just loved this quote: being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage. And I love that. I had a situation where my son has mental health challenges and was hospitalized, and wow, this really spoke to me, because loving someone very deeply does give you courage. So with that said, I know I went through an awful lot of information. It can be daunting. This presentation was not meant for you to be able to walk away and say, okay, I know all of what I need to do and I just get it done. It's really meant to just give you an awareness of the fact that there is planning that needs to be done. The planning should be done sooner rather than later. You want to make sure that all those pieces of your puzzle are in place, and that you work with the professional team to get that done for you. We never know when something could happen to us as the caregiver. We could fall, we could be in a car accident, we ourselves could end up with a diagnosis of a health situation. So we want to make sure that we get these things all in order, and then that helps you sleep better. And that's just one item you can check off your list, and you can rest easier. We don't have time to an extra energy to be worrying about something like this, when it's something that can just be taken care of. And then make sure that you have the plan in place, and that whoever's going to help you implement that plan knows the plan, and then you can move on and go on with your other daily activities there that you've got going on. So I hope that that was very helpful. If there are questions, I'm happy to take them. And my contact information is on the screen as well. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Jacqueline. That is a lot of information, and I didn't realize all those options were out there. So it's definitely something that people need to do their homework on.
Yes, absolutely. And the homework is essential. But the good news is that once you get these set up, you pretty much are done. It's just implementing the plan at the end of the day. So
Perfect.
it takes a little legwork on the upfront.
And if it's okay, I'll include your email in my post-event information. I'm going to be sending a bunch of links out that will help folks with some necessity things that they might need as far as caregiving goes. So This person said lots of good suggestions and things to think about and to take care of in advance, which is key. You definitely want to be prepared.
That is the key. That is the key.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.